Okay, we're back again. Sean is on the phone. I think we're on episode 8. Can you believe that?
Yeah, eight. Honestly, I completely lost count. I'm just rolling with it now. I'm like, okay, let's do it.
Okay, so today again, we're just going to catch up with Sean because he's now, um, as you said last week, which isn't posted yet, so, but it will be posted hopefully today. He took the plunge and he quit his job. And so you can just sort of like give a summary about that.
Yeah. So we've been discussing for quite a while some major turning points in life that I wanted to address. So, like the first one that we have talked about in the past was getting out of a relationship that I wasn't very happy in. Phenomenal human being she was, but like it didn't work out for us. Like for me, it wasn't good. And then the second big thing was a career choice that I'd made when I was, 17 years old. Kind of got looped up in it, really enjoyed it for the first couple of years. There's a lot of growth, a lot of learning. I was in a really cool, fun environment. And then it just started to dwindle off, and it got to a point where going to work was really a chore and emotionally and mentally draining. So it took a long time to get out of the relationship to get me to that point, and then I've we have put in place a couple kind of ideas or plans, so to speak, to get me out of my current career. None of which really happened. There's a lot of stuff that was like, okay, well, I really want this to happen in order for me to feel comfortable and safe to do the plunge or whatever it may be. And life happens, so none of it really worked out the way I visualized it. And I got to a point where enough was enough, and I realized that I needed to take the plunge and move on. It was the stress I was bringing home was starting to affect my current relationship. Not to a great extent, but enough that my girlfriend had brought it up to me a couple times. And was like, you need to either do something about it or stop complaining about it. So we decided to do something about it. So I last Friday we are now. I'm a week. Yeah, I'm a week in having left my pretty well-paying, consistent job that I hated, and we're yeah, yeah. It's been an interesting week.
So what have you been up to then?
Um, this week, honestly, I wanted to look into some schooling stuff. Deciding that I'm going to take a run at being a mortgage broker. So I need to get licensed for that, and some stuff that goes along with that industry. But this week, my girlfriend actually runs her own landscaping business, and she had an employee that got another job offer and had to leave, and she was a little shorthanded. So it kind of worked out perfectly. I kind of went in and was able to help her out with her business, and it was quite enjoyable for me, actually. We did two fairly large jobs, and they just so happened to be for two people that we're actually friends with. One of them is my actual mortgage broker that I've used on pre-approving myself for a mortgage and stuff like that. And another one was quite a close friend of ours. So it was a really cool experience to be, just hanging out, getting some stuff done, making backyards look beautiful, and being surrounded by phenomenal people. It was actually a really great week. Today's my first real day off slash like unemployed day off, kind of. And I'm not gonna lie, like I've been pretty lazy, and I'm kind of okay with it. Normally, I would eat myself alive, but like I'm feeling good. I just want to rest a little bit and restart, and start making some goals and start working towards them.
Isn't that I just find that a little bit, well, that's good news, but I'm just saying based on, past knowing how you used to feel when, let's say, a job wasn't readily available like the next day, and you were at home for a couple days, and how anxious you used to get and hard on yourself because you said that you became lazy, but now look at the mental state now that you're in.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think there will forever be a balance for me when it comes to taking, self-reflection time, taking time to recover, taking time to, relax and allow my mind and my body to get back to where it needs to be. But at the same time, I still don't think I can allow it to get too far in. Like, I can't go weeks on end with being completely unproductive and super lazy, because I know that for me personally, that's potentially a trigger that could lead me down a kind of a negative road. Am I okay taking a couple days and telling myself, hey, listen, like, you just worked your butt off, you're making some massive changes, let's take a little bit of time and just kind of let everything settle? Yeah, I'm okay with that now. And before I wouldn't be. I would, 2 or 3 days in, and I'd be going stir crazy. So today is Friday. I have Friday off. Saturday, we are going to go help a friend of my girlfriend's move. So for me, that's kind of like it's a little relaxing, but at the same time, like, I'm still out in the world and being productive. I'm helping people, so that's great. And then Sunday, we have a little bit of prep to do for the last big job I'm going to help my girlfriend with, to finish off her season. So, like, it's really only just one day of just relaxation, and then we're going to be kind of getting back to it. I have a little bit of work lined up in my current field. My older brother runs his own company, so I have a little bit of work lined up with him. He needs a little bit of help for about a week and a half, probably over the next 2 weeks or so, I'm hoping. And then I'm going to school, and then that's it. So he called and asked for some help, and I've had the availability and was like, yep, you know what, I can help you out before I, close the door, so to speak, on that facet of life. So yeah, it's interesting to see things kind of snowballing, and I'm not that nervous. The one job we had just finished was, like I said earlier, was for a mortgage broker that I know. And, I had a conversation with her and told her, like, hey, listen, I quit my job. This is what I'm looking to do. And she said, like, as soon as you get your schooling done, give me a phone call and I'll help you get your foot in the door. So it's nice to already have a mentor lined up, and, like, stuff that I was terrified about, like, it's just kind of naturally happening. It's just like, let's just go. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. We try something else. But, like, you'll never know unless you try it. So,
Well,
yeah, it's a really different mental space than we're used to anyway, or I'm used to. So it's great.
yeah, it's that people, if people could just wrap their head around that there's no such thing as failure, right? I think it's everything, as long as you learn a lesson in it, no matter what you do, you can never fail.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I've been actively working on adjusting my line of thinking to suit that. Failure for me used to be terrifying because I used to look at it as, if anybody's watching, they're going to think I'm a hack, or they're going to think I'm not as good as I think I am, or whatever it may be. And I let a lot of outside pressures kind of push me towards excellence, which it's unrealistic and it's incredibly stressful. So to be in a position where you can actually look at something and you're coming into it completely new and understanding that, like, hey, if I do quote unquote fail, is it really a failure, or is it just a lesson that needs to be learned? I mean, there's the potential that I try this career out and I it's not for me. I don't like it. And, I've gotten to a place where I can accept that. I can accept that this is potentially not the end all be all. But for me, it's just like, okay, this is perfect, because that's just one less thing I need to try to figure out what I want to do. So a lot of it is just an adjustment in thinking for me.
Exactly. It's like, remember we were just talking about that too, that attachment. If you could detach from an expectation, right? That's true peace, where you're not expecting an outcome, so then you can't be disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not necessarily, I don't think I'm going to walk into something and be exceptional. and I think for me that's a very interesting concept to kind of wrap my head around, because it's something that I'm used to being quite good at everything I do, and I tend to avoid doing things I don't think I'll be good at. May that be from fear of judgment, or just my own insecurities and not feeling adequate or enough. So to kind of stare those down the barrel and just be like, hey, listen, you might not be the best at it, but it doesn't mean hard work's not going to get you to where you want to be. Like, just put your head down, like, let's go, figure it out, versus being so paralyzed by the fear of something not going exactly how you planned it to go, to not make a move at all. Like, that's starting to become the thing that's more terrifying than anything.
Right. Yes, exactly. So I guess that failure to launch, remember we were talking about that too, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's just one of those things where I'm just looking at it and thinking, it's not necessarily now or never, but like I'm in the state of mind where I'm ready to make some serious changes. Like, and we've had the discussion before where it takes a lot for me to get to a point where I'm like, okay, like, now's the time. I'm working on this still actively, but my girlfriend always laughs at me because she's like, you're very all or nothing. She's like, you're 100% invested in something, or you just don't. It's just not for you. And like right now, I'm like 100% invested in this. I don't really like the idea of being 100% all or nothing. I'm trying to work on that a little bit. But that's the way I seem to be. So once I would 100% make up my mind on something, or I hit that breaking point of stress, or something so toxic I just can't ignore it anymore, like, that's what kind of spurs me into action. And I'm sure you've had clients that are probably quite similar to that.
Yeah, which is, I find that, I guess maybe it's just human nature that instead of trying to be kind of more self-aware of, okay, I'm spiraling, people wait until, like, it's, completely, they're completely depleted to seek help. And I find that just creates more work. Um, and then we go back to the stigma, I guess, of therapy, of recognizing that you need help. But you know it's when we spoke about it last week as well too. But therapy is, you go to the gym to work out, or you go to get massage therapy, or you'll go to the chiropractor to get an adjustment. So we're so physically motivated, but we're not mentally motivated. So I find that very interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And I'm a telltale proponent of that. Like, it took me a very long time to pay attention to my mental health. I mean, and I'm pretty sure we've talked about this before, but like, I recommended therapy to people that came to me with issues they were going through, and like, they were struggling in some aspects of life, and I'm like, hey man, like, I can be here and listen to you as a friend, but like, why don't you go talk to a professional who might actually help you get to the root of some of these problems. But then when it came to my own mental health, like, I was like, no, I don't need that. So it's a very interesting, and I was very quick to offer that up for a lot of people. Like, hey, like, therapy is a wonderful tool. You know what I mean? These are lessons that you can learn about yourself that, they'll help you get to the next level in life, whatever that may be. So I was very quick to be like, hey, let's go. You want to do it? But when it came to my own mental health, it was a little bit of pulling teeth. I mean, I had your phone number for like 6 weeks probably before I called you. So, yeah, it's a very interesting, that a lot of people probably feel the same way. And I think a lot of it just comes down to acceptance. Like, it's very difficult for a lot of people to accept that they might need help, in many regards in life.
Yes, exactly. And I do believe too. You wait. I think it's just because of the stigma. I don't know why, but and what I do find though, ironically enough, is that the younger generation. So I don't know what are they called now, Gen Y. I don't know, Zoomers. I'm not sure.
I have no idea.
Gen
Yeah.
Z. I'm not. I'm like
I
so.
know. Technically I'm a millennial. That's all I know.
Right, but
Which is
okay.
funny
So
because yeah.
millennials and that generation after, I find they're more aware of their mental health, and they will seek out. My demographic seems to be like, of course, it spans, but I'm finding younger clients are acknowledging that they need help and that they're struggling and that they're aware. They're very like when you do the consultation, they're very intuitive on how they're feeling and able to express.
Yeah.
So
I think that's kind of the way that most movements kind of go. I think a lot of change in society is led by younger generations that are able, just because they're able to look at the older generations and they can see the future, right? They can look and be like, okay, if I continue down this path, this is exactly what I'm going to get. Am I okay with that, or do I need to change that? I mean, my dad, harmless. Well, I mean, to him it was a harmless joke. I know him quite well, so I didn't take any offense to it. But somebody else might have taken offense to it. But he told me at one point, he's like, "Man, your whole damn generation's in therapy." And I laughed at him and was like, "Yeah, we're actively trying to fix the problems that you guys unwillingly kind of set on us, and it's not your fault. Like, you guys did the best you guys could, but like there's more information out there now. There's better tools out there. We have a better understanding of this stuff. So if we're able to head off the problem now,
well, it's hilarious.
We're hopeful for the next generations that they're going to be that much better. They're going to be that much more adapted."
There's a meme out there that says people are in therapy for people that aren't in therapy, right?
Yeah, like quite literally, right?
The people who refuse to go to therapy. So
I mean, my dad's quite a stoic
you should
guy.
probably send him your receipts.
Yeah,
he owes
literally.
you.
Yeah. So I need you to pay half on this. I can take ownership for like a good chunk of it, but like you set the foundation, man. I think he's quite a stoic person. He's not overly emotionally expressive.
That's that generation is like, you suck it up and you don't talk
absolutely.
about it.
Absolutely.
And you just keep going.
I was at work, and my last few weeks out, my last probably 6 weeks at work, I was starting to get like quite vocal, and I worked hand in hand with him. We're beside each other all day, every day, and I was starting to get quite vocal about like, I'm not happy, I want out, I want this, this isn't working for me, whatever it may be. And I know in an earlier podcast I'd mentioned that boundaries are really important, and that like I was getting ready to have a conversation with my dad about establishing boundaries, because like he was really starting to get under my skin a little bit. Obviously I was able to kind of do some journaling and some self-reflection and realize that like his behavior is consistent, my behavior is what was changing. So that's when I decided, like, okay, yeah, it's really time to pack this up, because this is really my job is starting to affect multiple facets of different relationships in my life. So but he told me at one point, he's like, "Man," he's like, "You know what you need to do?" He's like, "You need more bills." And I was like, "What?" He's like, "Wait until you buy a house. Like, wait until you have kids." He's like, "Then you're not going to be too worried about what job you do. You're just going to be worried about a paycheck." And as much as I can wrap my head around that concept, to me, it perfectly summed up his entire generation. And it was very, he was quite sincere about it, and he really wanted to help. But like, he's like, yeah, more bills, that's going to help you. Because he's like, you're not going to have a choice. You're just going to have to put your head down and go to work. And I looked at him like, well, like, that's not how I want to go about my life. I'm like, I spend, 35% of my day, 40% of my day easily, either at work or, driving to work. I'm like, I don't want to be miserable. Like, you're signing yourself up for misery if you're doing that. So just because that's what worked for his generation and they were able to put their head down and kind of suffer through it, like, I don't think my generation's able to stand for that anymore. I think there's a lot of people that are looking to, kind of change that status quo of, a work-life balance.
Well, it's value. Remember we were talking about time and value. Like, time is the value, right? Like, that's the currency. And what are you doing in exchange for that time? Right? Because we all have limited time. I think that's the issue with people. I think there's a misconception, and again, that's what their parents did, that's what they were sold. But as we know, we don't have, it's not like, when we're born, they give you okay, here, you have 75 years, you have 80, you have 10. Like, they don't tell you, right? We have an expiry date, and we don't know what that expiry date is. So to have that that type of thinking where you're like, okay, well, I get a job and I work for a certain amount of money, and this is my life, and I have to just get a house, and like, it's just a prescription, right, of what you're supposed to be doing. And then, life doesn't work that way, right?
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of things that have fundamentally changed within society, that kind of add the pressure or the stress. So, just for example, my dad bought his first house when he was 28 years old. Okay, he made, at the time, he was making $60,000 a year, which I believe he bought the house in '91. So he was doing pretty good. He always says he had more money in his pocket than he does now. So he bought that home. It was a pretty standard subdivision home, 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, had a pool, pretty nice standard subdivision home in Georgetown. So kind of close to where you are actually. And it was $180,000 is what he paid for it. So that home was 3 times his annual income. Now you flash forward to me in my situation. I'm doing the exact same job that he's doing, or that he did, because I grew up witnessing the lifestyle that job was able to provide. So for me, it was very, okay, it's interesting, but at the same time, there's a lot of room for me to be able to, live a very comfortable life doing this. So at the time of me getting involved, the pros and the cons were extremely acceptable. They were yeah, I'm yeah, okay, I can handle some of the physical tolls for the lifestyle that I want. The issue is that I made $30,000 a year more than what he did at the time. So I was making $90,000 a year, and the same house was worth 11 times my annual salary. So the dream that I kind of set myself up for when I was getting involved with the trade, it kind of doesn't exist anymore. And a lot of people say, well, you can move further away, you can do whatever, but because of the job I did, I had to be relatively central to the GTA or the Greater Toronto area if you're listening from somewhere else. And that really limited where I was able to go. So I literally felt like my life was on hold for 5 or 6 years, just wondering okay, is the housing market going to come down? Am I going to be a renter forever? Where am I going to settle? I feel trapped in this job. I feel trapped in this relationship. I feel trapped everywhere. You're treading water, trying to stay alive. You're taking on water, then you're drowning, and then you're spiraling. And next thing you know, you're in therapy, and you're going, how did I get to this point? So I think the key is for a lot of people to start recognizing some of these very early telltale signs and get to therapy and start learning about themselves, so they're able to catch themselves before they get to the point of just drowning and not even knowing what way up is.
Exactly. Exactly. I think that's the main issue, and I think it's just because, again, we go back to what people think counseling or therapy is. Like, I think some people believe like it's some you have to have some sort of mental disorder in order to seek help, but it's sometimes just arranging your thoughts, like speaking to somebody who's sort of unbiased, that that can kind of like see where the issues are, or where the root cause is, or start giving you some tools to help you and figure out what your goals are.
Yeah, what your goals are, what your, how you want to go about that. I mean, for me, like, it was a little bit of an identity crisis, because like I had a very stringent plan to get me from high school to about 25, and I felt like I met every aspect of that plan within reason, financially, work wise, everything. I was right on track, and yet, I was still picking my face up off the pavement. So to me, that was very difficult to deal with, and it kind of transitioned into me spiraling quite heavily. So yeah, if you're able to be talking to somebody relatively actively, I have a very good, very close friend of mine who actually, she has 4 kids, and 2 of them, okay, it's a mixed family, let's say. So 2 are stepsons. 2 of the children are stepsons, and the way that their biological mother left their life was quite traumatic. So like, those kids are 10 and 8, and they've been in therapy now for like 2 years. Just trying to give them a safe space to talk about how they're feeling, and work through some stuff. And I'm quite impressed with her being able to be like, hey, listen, like, let's get them into a very safe environment where they're able to freely express themselves, and hopefully it helps them down the road. So I think we need a little bit more of that. Just even if it was in schooling or whatever, like meditation hour, whatever it may be, something that helps focus on mental health. And I think that's a big proponent on what the Canadian government is kind of forgetting about in the last 18 months to 2 years. I think the mental health pandemic is going to be exceedingly worse than the COVID pandemic, personally.
Absolutely. And I don't see anything that, I know they've offered, I think there's online help, but I keep hearing, what I get is waiting lists, and people need help now, and it's now, as you said, it's crisis, right? Like, it's beyond the the state of, oh, I need to do something. It's serious crisis is happening.
Yeah, like, I believe, I'm pretty confident suicide rates are like going up quite significantly. Like, there's a lot of telltale signs that mental health within Canadians is fracturing, and it's fracturing at a very alarming rate.
And
so yeah, I think
it's the outcome. So like that people's coping mechanisms, right? So it's like the unhealthy coping mechanisms that you're numbing these serious mental health issues. So sort of like, distracting yourself with social media, becoming addicted to alcohol, whatever it is, like, you're using other methods to kind of like cope, and that's just numbing what the root cause of it is. But that's typically what's happening.
I agree, but there's a lot of extremely healthy outlets people choose to do as well. I mean, for example, when I was kind of just ended my previous relationship, and I was expecting myself to be like on the up and up after that, and I actually kind of spiraled a little bit worse at the start, where I was just like, oh my god, like, everything's changing. I found a lot of comfort in doing a lot of winter hikes, Bruce Trail hikes, stuff like that.
But
Um,
you were already
I
in
was
therapy.
I was already in therapy. I agree 100%. I was already working on myself, but this was, for me, a really healthy, active way of calming myself down, putting stuff into perspective. It was a healthy outlet. Um,
Exactly.
but then there's a good chunk of time where, the trails were shut down. You weren't allowed to go to the trails anymore because they were worried about just too many people flocking them because everything was shut down. Same thing with gyms. I know a lot of people that work out adamantly, and that's their solace. That's their, they don't go home and have a drink. They go to the gym and they spend 45 minutes, they beat themselves up, and they love themselves for it. And when you start taking some of that stuff away, like, these are people's coping mechanisms. These are how they kind of get through the day. These are how they actively healthy relationship with themselves. They know they're under stress. That's how they choose to deal with that stress. When these are slowly starting to kind of be restricted a little bit, I think that kind of bottlenecks the whole mental health crisis even more. So, yeah, I really think the next year is going to be a really interesting time frame. Yeah. I mean, I know you told me at one point that I said it was going to take far too long for us to get out of this crisis, and you said I was, like a little bit of a Debbie Downer on it. But yeah, I'm hoping we can deal with it quickly, and hopefully we can get out of it and everything can start opening up again 100%. But we'll see.
But didn't they announce that it kind of is now?
They did. They did. Ford. I know Ford said which is really good, that he has dates in place on which goal dates for pretty much opening up everything. I mean, I'm still, I'm working on my negative attitude and outlook on life. I definitely am. I still see it as, there's an election coming, so I never quite trust anything that comes out of a politician's mouth right before an election. But I really hope that we hit the targets that they're implementing, and life can kind of start again, because 2 years, knocking on 2 years of this kind of twilight zone is starting to affect a lot of people.
Well, yeah, like he said, what March, um, something. There's a March date of where you don't have to show your vaccination proof.
I think I could be misquoting this, but I believe March is like the removal of the vaccine passport, and I believe potentially getting rid of masks as well. Mandatory masks. I mean, everybody is still, free country. If you want to wear a mask, if that makes you feel comfortable entering a store, obviously, absolutely do whatever you need to do. But I think just the mask mandate and the vaccine passport is March, and then I know there's a couple other earlier targets for stuff as well. I honestly haven't looked into it enough to really talk too much on it, but
they've already removed limits, like the social distancing limits at gyms, I think, and restaurants. I think.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are just upset about the restaurant thing, because like there's a lot of, I live in Aurelia now, and there's a lot of small restaurants here, and I mean their max capacity is maybe 40 people. So they're running at 50%, which would be 20 people indoors. But at the same time, I can go down the street and go to a Costco, and their maximum occupancy is 1,150.
Oh my god.
So
doesn't make sense.
I understand that, with social distancing, everybody's got 6 feet. I get the premise behind that, but I mean, like, if you go into a Costco, like, I'm sorry, the likelihood that those guidelines are really followed probably pretty slim. So I think a lot of people are just getting upset with the double standard. So I think it's a good move to kind of slowly start. Canada's got a very high vaccine rate, population-wise. So, like, yeah, I think it's a good move. Hopefully, it helps with everything.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, I agree. Okay, so we're at the 34-minute mark, which is actually quite good for us.
Yeah, it's not bad. Yeah.
So we're going to end it here. And we will have a different topic next week. And so hopefully subscribe and keep listening, and we're gonna head out.
Bye, guys. Thanks for listening to my
Bye.
rants.